Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're going to do an overall review of Week 2 based on analytics. Now, if you've seen my previous videos on offensive and defensive split data, that should give you a general sort of idea about the things that I'm talking. I'll actually leave a link in the description to that video explaining offensive and defensive split data. But how I come to these rankings, these metric rankings, these data rankings, is I look at the overall ability of the offenses to, one, create completions, two, get first downs with the run, three, get first downs with the pass, and then, of course, their defenses, the better the defense is at preventing completions, at preventing run downs from being made, at preventing passing plays from being made, those defenses get more points as well in terms of the rankings. So, and this is week 1 data, so this is not something to feel incredibly confident about. Honestly, I wouldn't really feel confident about any of this data until about week 4. Is probably when I would feel the most confident about the data going forward, because you would have a pretty strong amount of games, sample size large enough to kind of look at things and just see where things go from there. But this is just kind of an interesting, week 1, early reactions. This isn't about wins either, because there were some teams that lost last week that should have won based on their overall splits, but there were some different things here and there that other variables that affected those wins and losses for those teams. But I figured I would just get the power rankings out in terms of the teams that perform the best when it comes to their completion percentage, their ability to create first downs in the run, their ability to create first downs with the pass, and of course their defense, how they performed in those areas, and then also look at week 2 and look at the matchups and do some predictions, potential predictions of what that week, just for some fun, because I do think it would be fun to kind of look back and see how this kind of stacks up. So starting with the power rankings, this is the power rankings for the 30 teams last week. As you know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Miami Dolphins did not play football due to Hurricane Irma, but I figured with the data that I had available, just do the teams that I have available. And this is how the power rankings shape up from 1 to 10. This is kind of those top teams. You might be looking at some of these teams and go, like the Cincinnati Bengals who lost, and go, why the Bengals are there? They lost and they were blown out. But a big reason for that loss, realistically, was their offense. Their defense played exceptionally well based on data. It's just that when you have as many turnovers as they did in that game, you typically are going to lose games like that. But overall, they did show a very strong defense in that game, and particularly passing defense. So I think in the future they'll win more games, and that's if they can cut down on the turnovers and those other kind of stuff. By week 4 we'll know a little bit more, but I still see the Bengals, based on the data that they put up last week, that if they can just get a little bit better on offense and cut down the turnovers, they could actually end up winning a lot more games than people think based on the early loss. The worst teams of the week, the Patriots. Now, a lot of this is influenced by that terrible performance of the defense and the terrible performance of the offense. But at the same time, you can't deny how bad it was. They were terrible when it came to completions. They were the worst of the entire week 1. They were bad when it came to passing offense, and their defense was just terrible across the board. Was easily the worst defense in the NFL at this point going into week 2. So Patriots are there. If they can improve, if they do better this week against the Saints, if they do better if by week 4 they improve on these numbers, then great. If they can do a 180 or a 360 even and up these numbers a bit, then they might rise a little bit. But you can't just have a performance like that where it was bad on all sides. It was bad football on offense and bad football on defense, with the exception of the rushing offense. And then, of course, with the Seattle Seahawks, that's another team where the defense played extremely poorly overall. The Seahawks offense, the only thing that really worked well was the run. Pass was bad. The Cardinals, another team that was kind of like that. The Saints did well when it came to completions, did okay when it came to passing downs, but the defense overall was terrible. The Colts obviously were bad. The Jets were bad. The 49ers on defense were better than the offense, but just kind of bad. And of course, the Ravens were actually relatively decent on defense, but bad when it came to their offense. So you can look at the rest of this, and again, this basically ranks the completion percentage, the total completion percentage on every down, the total run conversion rate when it comes to creating first downs with the run on all downs, the ability to create first downs with the pass on all downs, and then the same goes for the defense, where it's flipped, where the better you are the better you are at preventing completions, stopping run downs, stopping pass downs, the higher the score you get. And then the power rankings is basically a combination of both those things. So this is how things look in week 1. Going to week 2, these are my picks based on the teams that I have available data on. These are the games I'm going to be looking at and predicting this week, or at least doing my first attempt at predicting. I have the Detroit Lions winning. That is a game where the spread favors the Giants, but I think based on how the Detroit Lions played on offense, and also based on how they played on defense, and also how poorly the Giants played in all three phases, whether it was offensively or defensively, I think this should be an easy win for the Detroit Lions. I also have the Packers winning. The Falcons are actually favored in this game. I think it's mainly because they're at home, and the Falcons were the NFC championship guys. But that Packers offense and defense was hit on all cylinders against the Seahawks. So I expect to win there. The Rams over the Redskins. I know this is surprising now, and a lot of you guys are going to go Rams, but they were terrible last year. Yeah, that was last year. This year, put up a very good passing offense, fairly decent defense as well, while the Redskins are just not playing well on defense, and the offense is stalling, and that's not a good combination. The Redskins were very offensive dependent last year, and if the defense, if the offense slips up with the defense that the Redskins have been putting out there, it's not going to be good. So I have the Rams winning there as well. The 49ers, this is a surprising one, I know. This is mainly kind of week 1 overreactions data-wise. But based on how the San Francisco 49ers team played as a whole versus the Seahawks, this would be a 49ers win. Now, of course, again, it's overreaction. The Seahawks obviously probably scored really low because they played the Packers, who one had a great defense and one had a great offensive performance, which obviously hurt the Seahawks. But the 49ers defense played relatively better than I expected. The offense also was not the best for the 49ers, but neither was the Seahawks offense. And yes, this is at Seattle. I would still go with Seattle based on just me being a football guy. But at least based on data, based on the week 1 data, it favors the 49ers there. Then of course with the Dallas Cowboys, it favors the data favors the Cowboys in that particular matchup. Raiders, it obviously favors the Raiders against the Jets. Jaguars, it favors the Titans, but by a little bit, not a ton. This is honestly kind of a toss-up game. The Tennessee Titans just did not play well against the Oakland Raiders, whether it was offensively or defensively. I don't know if that will continue, but the Jaguars offense did not play well either. That Jaguars win was really defensive dependent. The defense played really well in that game, and as a result, the Jaguars won. So I think this is kind of a toss-up as well. It's a very even match, but I give the edge. The data gives the edge to the Jaguars. Then, of course, Kansas City Chiefs versus the Eagles. It has the Eagles winning in that matchup. Cleveland Browns versus Ravens. Again, another surprise one. The Cleveland Browns on defense played really well. On offense, it was kind of all over the place. And, of course, you have the Kaiser effect, where he just took way too many sacks in that game. And this could be a situation where it could be the same issue where the offense for the Browns plays relatively well. But if you have a quarterback that takes 7 sacks in a game, then you're just not going to be very incredibly efficient at making completions and helping your offense out. So But at the same time, the Ravens' offense was so bad against the Bengals. I mean, it really was bad in terms of all phases. So these teams are kind of evenly matched, but it favors the Browns in this matchup, mainly because the Browns have a little bit better of an offense in terms of what it can do, and have a little bit better of, not as good of a defense as the Bengals, but definitely somewhat comparable in terms of what they were able to do week one. So it favors the Browns in this situation. And of course, we get to the Saints, the Patriots. This is another one that's fairly close, but it's in favor of the Saints. Both these teams are very similar, in fact. Both these teams have fairly. The only real difference is the Patriots have a really good rush offense, but a poor pass offense. But both these teams have terrible defenses. So this is actually a game that if you have a fantasy team and you want to get some points on the board, this would be a good matchup to kind of look at. It favors the Saints just because they overall have a relatively better offense in terms of passing offense and completion percentage, which typically passing offenses beat rushing offenses more often, historically speaking, based on data. So it favors the Saints. It's at home with the Saints, and unless the Patriots have a huge 180, which could happen. I mean, again, this is based on Week 1 data, but unless the Patriots have a huge 180 in terms of their data, this looks more like a Saints win. Then we get to the Colts versus Cardinals. The data prefers the Colts in this matchup. I know some people might think, well, the Cardinals are going to win this one and all this other kind of stuff. But the thing is the Cardinals they have a quarterback situation that's bad. David Johnson is out. He was a huge part of that offense, working or not working. I mean, you guys just don't realize how big of a loss David Johnson is. That is just going to create systemic issues across the entire board for that offense. So as much as this may sound crazy that the Colts would beat the Cardinals, it's really just a matter of both these teams having really bad Week 1 starts, but the Colts defense being a little bit better in terms of that particular matchup. So that's just basically why the data favors the Colts in that matchup. Of course, we have the Minnesota Vikings. It favors the Vikings over the Steelers in that matchup because of how well the Vikings played in Week 1. And then, of course, we have the Buffalo Bills. It favors the Buffalo Bills versus the Panthers. It's a very close matchup, though. That's the only thing. It's very close. Both these teams are very similar in terms of offense and defense, but the Bills' offense is just a little bit better. So that's kind of why it favors the Bills in that matchup. And then, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals versus Houston Texans favors the Bengals in this matchup, which should not be surprising. But again, both these teams are very similar. It's going to be bad football, guys. I don't know what else to say. This is not going to be a fun game to watch. Both these teams are mainly defensive dominant with offenses that are just bad. So maybe the Bengals get their confidence back in this game, but it favors them, and then it's just a matter of Deshaun Watson can do his thing. So these are the picks for this week. Leave a comment below if you have any questions, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.